Good afternoon, students. I hope you guys have all had a very good past few days. So I just finished grading and analyzing your guys' quizzes, and I saw that we have a few gaps with our conflict regarding character versus technology that I just wanted to fill in those holes with this little mini lesson today. We are struggling to make some differentiations between our character versus character, character versus society, and character versus nature. So when we first discussed this lovely type of conflict, we made a really big emphasis that it's easy to confuse it with other types of conflict because of various components. So one thing that we talked about was how characters battling against technology that has become too powerful or is being used for evil purposes. A lot of us are starting to confuse that with the character versus society component because of this idea of it being dystopian, which is something that we wrote here, or it being used for unjust purposes. So we are taking this fight and comparing it to a character versus society. But it's important to acknowledge that the thing that's really being battled against is technology. So if you are fighting droids that are being controlled by the government, that's still going to be a character versus technology because you're fighting those droids who are taking over the world, right? And then another one that we're really starting to lose focus on is our scientific processes. So when something like a nuclear reactor, which is going to be one of our videos, explodes, we're seeing that as more of a nature component, which is a completely valid experience because nuclear reactors do involve natural things. But a nuclear reactor is a form of technology, and so that exploding is going to be a character versus technology conflict. And the last one that I want us to talk about before watching the video is this use of artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence beings have taken on roles of characters sometimes, but it's important to remember that artificial intelligence is still a form of technology. So unless all of the people in the story or the TV show are artificial intelligent beings, if your main character is fighting, it's going to be technology. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and watch this video. So it's going to show three different components of what we're talking about. So let's go ahead and watch this. It is... So it's important here to acknowledge that this gentleman here is a human. So there is a human inside of this suit, where the guy that's lit up green, he's just a robot, right? So whether this green robot man had a role in this show as a character, this is still going to be a man versus technology, because in this scene he is physically fighting a robot or a piece of technology.
The nuclear power plants that were destroyed by the bombs have begun to melt down. My drones detected the first of them 4 months ago.
So I want to draw our attention really quick. So our character here, who I believe is a robot, mentioned how bombs blew up those nuclear reactors and caused them to melt. So it is important to acknowledge that the real conflict here that they're really going to be discussing is this idea of those nuclear reactors melting. And so since those nuclear reactors melting is the conflict that is of concern in this moment, not the fact that somebody bombed them, but the melting of the reactors, that's going to be a man versus technology. So if they were more concerned with the fact that, hey, someone's blowing up our stuff, that would change the type of conflict. So the focus of the scene is really important in this one to make sure that you're identifying
There are more than a dozen at-risk plants around the world. 7 currently burning. Global radiation levels are already rising. By my calculations, in less than 6 months, 96% of the Earth's surface will be uninhabitable.
Okay, so that moment, that is why we are seeing this man versus technology, is because the results of those exploding is what is the primary concern.
There is no logic to love, anger, wonder, joy.
I understand the concepts, but I don't feel them myself. And unfortunately, they've created a paradox in my programming.
What do you mean? Explain.
My 2 main parameters are in opposition due to human emotions. I was programmed to protect the framework, but also to preserve your life above all others.
Well, how is that a contradiction?
Because the greatest threat to the framework, Doctor, is you.
Well, that's...
Okay, so I'm going to just fast forward this really quick. So what we're going to see is that, as she mentioned, she's having this paradox. And so she is going to react.
I can now solve both problems at once.
Okay, so the reason here that she was able to solve both problems is because that he made a comment within the scene that I fast forward that he thought that that machine was good for the humans, and so that overcame the paradox that she had. And so we see these different moments, and each of them really touched on those issues. So you can apply the same concepts that we saw within the video to a text as well. So when we come back together next class, we're going to see how that happens with our short story that we're going to read. So I hope to see you there. Have a good day.